For all of American history, up until this point, the 14th Amendment has been interpreted one way. And today, we have breaking news out of the Supreme Court that could shift this understanding forever. And it's a better argument than you think. Okay, so birthright citizenship, by the way, sorry, quickly, if you're new here, please subscribe down below, really appreciate it. Okay, so birthright citizenship comes from the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment specifically says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Okay, this has been interpreted throughout most of American history to mean if you are born on U.S. soil, whether you're an illegal immigrant, or pretty much anything other than like a kid of a diplomat, then you become an American citizen. And this obviously has a number of problems, like becoming an anchor baby, for instance. People are incentivized to just, while they're pregnant, fly over to the U.S., have a baby, and boom, they get American citizenship. And that causes a number of problems for a number of reasons. But for all of American history, that's how this has been interpreted. And the United States Supreme Court has accepted a case to hear a challenge to this interpretation. And this might have you thinking, how can they accept this case? Is it not obvious? All persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens, right? That's what it says. Not quite. It says all persons born and naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And that's what this argument is about. It's about whether that's saying you have to be there legally under the law in order to be a citizen. This has more merit than you might think. If you remember at the time of the 14th Amendment, illegal immigration wasn't really a thing, right? It wasn't like you could just take a flight over from Somalia, land in the US, and have a kid, and boom. That would be extremely costly, and there were a lot of barriers up to that. You couldn't do that. That wasn't a thing you could do. It wasn't a feasible thing for almost anyone to fly across the globe, let's say, and enter the United States. And even if you did, America wasn't really space constrained, right? Like if you came up from Mexico and lived in like New Mexico, which didn't happen that much, but and you had a baby there, like it wasn't a huge deal. It wasn't very common. There weren't the numbers we see now. This was intended especially and only to apply to the kids of former slaves and to apply to deal with the slavery issue. And that is antiquated. Most of the Constitution has held up robustly, and this is one of the areas that hasn't. It's not just due to the obviously abusable nature of this, right? It is insane that I can just have never been in America, never have, spent any time here, but just because my mom flew over here, birthed me, and then we left, I'm automatically entitled to U.S. citizenship. That is crazy, especially if I did that illegally. Illegal immigrants aren't actually subject to the jurisdiction thereof, right? They aren't subject to actual laws because they have snuck in here illegally and are breaking the law even by existing in the country. And this isn't without precedent, right? Kids of diplomats don't become citizens automatically. So this is a very reasonable thing. But I think the more important kind of point with this birthright citizenship fight is that the fact that we have birthright citizenship is disastrous for the Second Amendment. I went through the data, and I wasn't actually sure this would be the case, but I did a little bit of a dive through the data. And people that are born as a result of birthright citizenship, vote as a result of birthright citizenship, are overwhelmingly likely to vote Democratic. Now, I wasn't actually sure that necessarily would be the case when I looked into it. You have Cubans and other populations, of course, that have swung rightward, and even Hispanics have swung rightward as of recently. But the second generation immigrant population, which is kind of a proxy for the birthright citizenship population, you'd imagine them to be similar. We don't have data on people who got, American citizenship through birthright specifically because it's kind of hard to parse. But that population votes overwhelmingly Democratic. And that has disastrous knock-on ramifications. If you think about how close some elections have been, where they come down, in the case of North Carolina, right, the North Carolina Supreme Court, election, they came down to a couple hundred votes. That single-handedly would have swung as a result of birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship alone is the reason the Democrat won in that contest. If Bush versus Gore had gone the other way, you could have attributed that to birthright citizenship as well. Even just thinking logically, birthright citizenship is insane. Think about it for a second. So I'm here illegally, right? I've broken the law to enter the country. I've, maybe committed crimes, maybe not, whatever. And I have a kid here, and now, because my kid's an American citizen, I'm able to stay here forever, and I'm able to leech off the U.S. welfare system, for instance. How does that make any sense? That is crazy. This is a crazy issue, and it is vestigial. Most countries in the world do not have birthright citizenship. In fact, it's exceedingly rare. There's like 4 or 5 countries in the world, developed countries in the world, that have this as a tenet. It doesn't make logical sense. At the time when the 14th Amendment was written, it did. Admittedly, it did. They were trying to solve the problem of formerly enslaved people not having citizenship, and then this was able to completely flip that. But since then, it has been an insane, disastrous, terrible policy. And the Supreme Court has accepted that. And that has the potential to radically reshape the future of the Second Amendment and every other issue moving forward. Sorry to make this video so short. I just wanted to quickly come on here and talk about it. I thought it was important to talk about. Now, I'm not actually sure which way they will rule. I see good legal arguments in both directions. And I personally don't like it, but I think the Supreme Court will come to the right decision in this case, right? The originalist justices will attempt to interpret the law as intended. And that may come down against birthright citizenship or for birthright citizenship. And honestly, I support it in either direction. I'm very well aware that the job of a judge is not to make what they think should happen, but rather to interpret the law, and that is how it should be. But practically speaking, if birthright citizenship gets overturned, it is a massive win for us. Anyway, hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, please subscribe down below if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.